say, tell me where you really from. I ain't talking New York, I don't mean West Coast. I mean, look at your skin, so where you really from?
What's going on, everybody? Welcome and thank you for tuning into Great Wall of America, Untold Stories, a limited podcast series where we as immigrants share our stories of how we overcome the barriers that face us in this country today. Today's guest is Lord Kimchi, a Korean-American entrepreneur who's been a prominent figure in New York for decades. Two of his establishments, Fat Buddha and Hidden Tiger, are iconic landmarks in the East Village, as well as in the minds of the community. My first ever release party was held at Fat Buddha in 2017, and for that, I'll always be grateful. Here is Lord Kimchi. Lord Kimchi! Sir, this is a question I've been asking everybody to start off.
Yeah.
Where are you from? But most importantly, where are you really from?
That's a good question, I guess. I was born in New Orleans. Our family moved our way up. My brother was born in North Carolina. So we were kind of raised on Southern food and stuff. We made our way up to New Jersey, lived there most of our lives, and then moved to Japan a year, moved to Korea a couple times. I got that vax on the arm, Korean, the scar for TB, TB shot, and been in New York a pretty long time, you know. So I was in Brooklyn about 20-some years, and then moved to Queens because my son's being born, so Joa.
Nice.
So I've been in Queens for about 8 years, coming up on 8 years now.
In New York, almost 30 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the reason I asked, the where you're really from, that's part of the music, and the whole idea is like, the whole concept is about this idea that, you're born and raised here, but I'm sure, to somebody else, they could be like, oh, where you from? I'm from New York. Right. But like, where you from before that? Where you really from? You're like, before I was born?
I just jumped the gun. I just say I'm Korean.
Right.
Is that what you're
You do the work
me?
for them.
Yeah.
Right.
Unless I wanted to be uncomfortable the whole time. Then
right. Which is kind of fun,
I was born in New
too.
Orleans.
Which is kind of fun, too.
I was born in Nolens, bro.
Yeah.
Where you from?
Right. And how did do you mind sharing how your family got to New Orleans?
My father met my mother down there and then had me. So, but then moved out right away. They were
Gotcha.
like, okay, this is a while ago. So,
right. And they were born in New Orleans as well. They were born in the States as well.
No, they were in Korea.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
My mother was like one of the first out of the family to come to America.
And what is she?
She was a student.
Okay. Yeah. What about Pops?
He was like a teacher at some college.
Got it.
Dirty old man, I guess.
Nice. I mean, like New Orleans, I guess, there's a history of a big Asian immigrant demographic in, like, I guess, Northeast, like New York, and then, LA and SF. I guess I personally have never really met a lot of people whose family was from New Orleans like that.
No, I'm probably growing up. I was like, I'm probably the only Asian kid born in New Orleans.
Right.
And
how long were you in New Orleans before y'all bounced?
Pretty sure right away.
So did you have any
really
memories of New Orleans at all?
Not really. Just like
cool.
Crawfish boils every summer, and like my mom's favorite dish is etouffee.
Right.
So as a kid, you don't think it's not normal until you start hanging out with other kids, and I'm ordering grits at a diner and they're like, grits? I'm like, pass the hot sauce, bro. And they're like, whoa, where did you learn to eat grits? I'm like, what do you mean? Doesn't everybody eat grits?
Right.
Doesn't every mom sing When the Saints Come Marching In when you're a baby?
Right.
But I didn't realize that until I became a parent, and then I'm singing same songs that my mom would sing to me. Obviously, Twinkle, Twinkle, but, When the Saints Come Marching In is definitely not on most people's playlist. So.
Right. Wait, okay, I'm not actually familiar with that. What is that, When the Saints... That has to
song.
Do with New
When
Orleans?
the Saints Come Marching In.
Does it have to do with New Orleans?
Yeah, it's like a New Orleans
Got
song,
it, okay. That's cool.
Like South, yeah.
And then the family stopped by North Carolina, dropped off another kid.
Yeah,
popped down
my brother
kid.
was born in North Carolina.
And
Then we moved up to Minnesota. My dad
wow.
worked for Johnson & Johnson, or one of the couple companies. So he was like a doctor.
And was part of the moving because of his job?
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. And then after that, after Minnesota, you guys landed in New Jersey.
Yeah.
Yeah. But all the way growing up in the South, I'd imagine you was around all types of other people, you know, black, whites.
I have no idea.
No?
I was so young.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I see
got
what you
to
mean.
New Jersey
Right.
when I was like before kindergarten.
Oh, got
Yeah,
you. Okay.
yeah.
What's up, everybody? Thank y'all for tuning into the Great Wall of America podcast. I just want to take a quick second now to give a shout out to Lunar Hard Seltzer, the sponsor for this series. Some of the best people, some of the best drinks, and they're always showing out for the community. So make sure you show them some love at Lunar Hard Seltzer. Back to the podcast.
My neighbor was,
Right.
you know, lived down the street. She was black. You know,
Right.
I had to. My childhood friends, I still keep in touch with them.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kara and Allison. Big up to you guys.
Shout out to
So
Kara and Allison.
made me. You know, I remember I had to play Barbies. And,
Oh, okay.
and I was just like,
Got in touch with your other side.
I don't want to do this.
I had a really good friend at college. He was from Jersey, and he would always call it the swamps. You know, and now like every time someone say they're from Jersey, like I just have this like instinct to be like, oh, the swamps.
The swamps, yeah.
Yeah. And then like some people find it funny. Other people's like, no, Jersey's hella nice. What are you talking about?
It depends where you are. Yeah, you grew up probably by the stadium and stuff.
Yeah, it depends on where you are. What was like the early days like? Did you run over to the city, to New York all the time from Jersey?
Yeah, I was like a avid skater, so I would skate anywhere,
Got it.
everywhere. We would come into the city once in a while.
Uh-huh.
But you know, back then, like you get chased out of everywhere from cops. So
Just for skating.
yeah, just for
Right.
skating. Even in Jersey, you know,
Right.
they really had nothing to do, I guess, except for give us a hard time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so you were a skater. I mean, I assumed like your parents wanted like somebody that wasn't a skater.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pretty much.
What did they have the typical? I'm curious, right? Because I feel like different generations. I wonder if they also had the same expectations of the Asian kid.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
my my mother. We basically were raised by my mom, so. You know, I was kind of like a skater. I would go to punk shows in, Trenton, New Jersey, City Gardens. And then in the city, I would come to the city for shows and then skate and different stuff like that. So I love the city, but I liked the fresh air of northern Jersey because it was kind of like in the sticks.
Yeah, I was gonna ask. Like, did you wish you would lived in New York? But I mean. You
Part
also
of it.
appreciated the nature side of things.
Yeah, I mean, I would feel a lot of, after skating in the city, a lot more filth on my body than skating in New Jersey or something. So.
Right. And what were some of the kids you were skating with, like, what kind of kids were
It was
they?
mostly my hometown crew.
Okay. So y'all would
Timex
come out
crew,
together.
Yeah.
Right.
So I got us a sponsorship from like local skate shop, and
Right.
they would give us some free boards and grip tape and stuff
That's
like
nice.
that. And yeah, we'd go out and we'd hand it out to some of the younger kids.
Wow.
Just pretty cool because some of
Yeah.
them, they would come to the bar.
Yeah.
Some kid Mike was like, "Yo, this guy, do you understand? He's like a skate god," and and I was like, he's like one of the younger dudes. Now he's a little older, he's
Right.
a man now,
Yeah.
fully grown. But back then, I remember him as a young kid, giving them stuff, eyes, pop open because you're giving them free gear and
Right.
stuff. So it was fun.
Did y'all get into, you and your friends in the crew, did y'all get into any trouble with other, like, skaters or?
Not really skaters, just the law.
Just, yeah.
Running from cops.
Was that exciting?
It was more annoying than
Right.
anything.
Yeah,
We're not really committing a crime here.
Yeah.
We could be doing other stuff.
Right.
But, we were kind of like outlaw-ish. We're like the skater kids.
Right.
Smoke weed, drink beers and stuff like that.
Right.
But we were kind of friends with everybody. So
Do you feel like you were there was a sort of confidence from those kind of convictions that you had in yourself and like doing what made you happy and
yeah, I definitely think like if you jump on a skateboard, it's not a team sport; it's an individual. You also build a certain type of resilience and persistence on trying to land a certain trick over and over again. Slam hard on your face, you get back up, you keep trying and trying, you make a mistake, you're the guy that pays for that, right? So there's a lot of great things that came out of skating.
You still carry with you think?
Yeah, 100%. And DJing, like everything I do, I try to find the trick, the method to do it easier, and then the DJ side of me, like remix everything. So that goes with food, that goes with mostly food, actually. Right? I mean, food is an amazing
I mean, I
thing.
guess the food is kind of like what not directly food, but like Fat Buddha is what I know you through.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I want to get to Fat Buddha soon, but I do want to ask because I didn't know you were a DJ.
Yeah, I DJed for a long time.
Okay, so
Yeah,
how did
94
got you and
started
94? So that was after
myself.
that was after all the skating and all that.
Yeah,
Right.
it was kind of coincided with it.
Okay.
Yeah, but
What kind of music were you spinning in the beginning?
Back then it was called jungle, UK jungle drum and bass.
Got
It's
it.
mainly coming out of the London. I remember listening to like DJ Randall, getting like bootleg tapes from my friends, and then like listening to it all the time. So I listened to like this hardcore techno. It was called breakbeat, and then it started like pulling a lot of like reggae and raga samples, and so that's when I really got hooked on it. I was like, wow, this is dope. And then
You were deep. You were like ahead. You
Oh,
weren't,
yeah,
you weren't
yeah,
just
yeah.
DJing like, cause like for example, like
yeah, most people don't know that.
Right.
I mean, some of the older heads out there, they're like, of course, that's
Right.
DJ Soul from Direct Drive. So
Right.
is
Is that you, DJ
yeah,
Soul?
Yeah, like Soul Korea.
Wow.
So I did. We threw like some of the larger drum and bass parties. They were all 21 and over, and that was also happening when the rave scene was going on. I appreciated the rave scene, but I didn't really do drugs. I was trained in martial arts. I was just like, I'll drink a beer, I'll smoke a little weed, but that's
Yeah.
it. But I was all about the music. Like all my stacks of records were all
Right.
white test presses and all kinds of stuff from drum and bass. And I threw that party. I started Direct Drive in '98.
What's Direct Drive?
That's the name of the party I was throwing.
Cool.
So we did a
Direct
weekly
Drive.
at Backtoon in the meatpacking district when it was meat there, and then kept running for about like 10 years as a weekly Saturday. So every Saturday, I missed like one or two for a gig.
Jeez.
And my daughter being
That's a
born,
good running.
and then ran for another 10, 12 years. We were doing Webster Hall with the crew out there, doing
Wow.
the main floor once a month Friday, hosting the room. And
Yeah.
so while I was running Fat Buddha, I was still doing Direct Drive events. We were doing Dub War, which is like the first dubstep party outside of London. So, we had a lot of electronic music I'm really into, which people don't know.
Yeah.
Fat Buddha, a lot of people thought it was going to be an electronic bar. Like we were going to play house, techno, jungle. But I was like, nah, I'm going to do hip hop.
Right.
And they're like, what?
And that's why, like, I just assumed that when you say DJ, I assumed it was more like hip hop.
No, that was like
related.
later on. I did like
Sure.
corporate events and stuff like that because I was a
Right.
full-time DJ, 7
Yeah.
years. So running
Wow.
street teams, I would do flyering. We did a whole bunch of stuff under
Right.
Direct Drive banner.
Yeah.
So, a guerrilla marketing basically.
Right.
Tribeca Film Festival, Uniqlo opening, they asked us to hand out flyers and stuff and
Right.
get the word out. We had a really large mailing list and an email list and actually putting, stamps on, like 5,000 letters going
Like
out.
real community shit.
Yeah, like
Before, like, there was like online community words and stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
keywords and whatnot.
Yeah. So
That's
I did
dope.
that and then jumped in, decided to do a hip hop bar because I felt like it was
Right.
needed in the city.
Right. And while you were doing, while you were skating, you're DJing and it's music that I can't imagine. My mom never really understood what hip hop is or what hip hop was or is, right?
Does she understand that?
No, not really.
Yeah.
I think her never telling me not to do it
Right.
was like the realest way for her to support it.
Right.
Because but like I think she was hoping that it was gonna be a phase that eventually passes. Then I take advantage of the opportunities of America and go do whatever.
Right.
Was there any pushback from your parents while you were having all this wild fun that
I guess, my mother you know, rest in peace. She's like my best friend. I spoke to her every day, you know, and while I'm doing everything, obviously at first she had a lot of concerns about the bar. You know, but when I was like a teenager, pretty rebellious, but, you know, I started sneaking out, and then I just started walking out quietly. I was just like, you know, I'm safe, Mom. I'm not, you know, doing crazy drugs or anything. I'm just going out to have a good time, check out these events and stuff like that. So, but I guess, you know, I was training and teaching Taekwondo for many years. So, while I'm throwing the events, I'm doing Taekwondo during the day, and then I would go to the clubs late at night. So I did that for many, many years. Not sleeping. That's why my party was called Direct Drive. I was driving direct to where I had to go, hand out flyers, hang out, and then I would drive right back and then have to teach the next morning. So I was on that trajectory to become, you know, the grandmaster and own a couple schools and keep teaching, which I was like really gifted at, like especially with little kids. My classes are huge. They're like 30 to 50 children. So any Taekwondo school, you know, there's like 5 to 12, right? So I had closed down the schools near me, and that was my trajectory. So when I said, I think I'm going to throw events full time and DJ full time, my mom was like, well, what? Everybody was kind of like, what are you talking about?
You keep switching people up, man. Like,
I just kind of felt a calling, though, you know? I had a vision in my head. I was like, I have to go do this. Like, I have to.
Very intuitive decisions. You know?
It was literally a vision in my head. Yeah. So, you know, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna start throwing events. I'm gonna start doing this, start doing that. Of course, you know, a couple failures, you know, started up a few parties. They didn't do well. And then when I was like, I'm going to do Direct Drive, I'm going to try to run it. And, you know, with the help and support of like DJ Cassine and Lion and, you know, my whole Direct Drive squad, we did really well. We made a huge impact, I feel. So.
You know, I think this is like kind of obvious probably to you because you made all these decisions to pursue what, you know, you could, what you wanted. What do you think gave you that kind of, I don't know, gave you that kind of willpower to follow through with all these things that's not really, you know, because a lot of people, they want to do these things. I mean, they're like, but I think I should get a job. I think I should follow what my mom, you know, what my parents expect of me. What gave you, you know, that insight at that time to do that?
I think that, you know, growing up, I was never a good student. I didn't fit the box, you know. And then as I got into martial arts, I realized, you know, I built up a tremendous amount of confidence, especially as an adult man. So, you know, then I realized I can create anything. You know, I meet people that own businesses, and I'm like, this guy's kind of an idiot. Like, how did he do this, you know? But he just hires a good team and stuff like that. So, I guess growing up, you know, there was no other Koreans with us, like growing in our area. The church was a different story. You know, there's more people, but
y'all went to the church.
Yeah, there was a church in Morristown, which you know people would congregate to that area. But for us, we're in like northern Jersey. You know, very affluent, white. You know, my brother and I, we have a skateboard. You know, girls are driving BMWs. They have an elevator in their house. They have horses. You know, and I was just like, whoa, that's kind of crazy. But you know, being kind of you know, having shitty teachers say terrible things to you as a child. I kind of just was like, whatever, just going through the motions of life, trying to survive. And then when in my 20s, I was like, oh, I'm going to start creating stuff and doing stuff that I want to do. You know, kind of the same trajectory as my teenage years. Just, I'm going to do whatever I want to do. I'm going to go skate. I'm going to go do this. I'm going to do that. And then you don't really realize until later that you've actually become kind of an expert in certain fields. So, you know, doing DJing. While I'm doing it, sometimes, of course, I was like, what am I doing? Like, maybe I should get something to help, you know, with money and et cetera. It was a struggle. But, you know, being an actor, there's always a template, right? Be a waiter, a waitress, or a bartender, and then do the, you know. There's no real template there for what I was doing. But I guess I just kind of decided at some point, you know, that I'm just going to start
You
creating
had your
whatever
own
I want to
agency.
create. Yeah.
Yeah.
So when I had the vision of doing an event, I actually experienced it when I threw a large event at the Roxy. I'm like standing in the middle of the floor. There's like 3,000 to 4,000 kids in there. You know, I was like looking around. I was like, oh, this is the vision that I saw like several years ago. And then there was a period where afterwards I was not really that driven. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So I just kept doing it, kept trying to help other people. My buddy came to me with you know, there's a lot of opportunities that kind of cross your table. And, you know, I felt like if it's on my trajectory, then I'll do it. I'll help you out. We'll partner up. A lot of the partnerships didn't work out or even get off the ground, but I just kind of try to stay true to a trajectory.
Right.
So this is what I do.
Yeah.
So, you know, and then every year, kind of like a New Year thing, I would have different sayings, you know. I'd be like, all right, I'm only hanging out with black belts.
Right.
And I'm not trying to like
Yeah.
mess with like white, yellow belts.
Yeah.
It's different if you're mentoring them, but to
Right.
work with them, it's
Right.
like very different. So, and when I don't do that, I wind up getting kind of burned or whatever, you know.
Right.
So then it was like, I'm going to do only dope. Ished, you know.
Yeah.
I censor myself. I don't know.
Yeah. No,
But that was like
yeah.
my year where I was like, I'm only gonna do dope stuff.
Yeah.
Like that's it. You know, I don't care whether it's monetary or whatever.
Yeah.
If it's cool, it's on my trajectory, so I'm gonna do it. So these like things keep layering, right? And then so that's kind of where I'm at right now. You know, now I'm, you know, I've always had people ask me for advice, and I'm always willing to give it. Freely. I'm like, hey, no worries. I want you to succeed. Want you to do well.
Passing the information.
Yeah. Especially like, you know, young Asian dudes that are like, hey, I, you know this brand, da 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 da. I'm like, oh, that's amazing. Like, thank you. Like giving me flowers. You know, but yeah, moving forward, you know, I'm gonna keep creating dope stuff.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you know, for me that's something that I've had to realize because of social media in a weird way. Just like realizing, oh, you know, because I used to archive stuff that don't do well, or like delete posts that don't do well. But I realized it really wasn't, you know, that it wasn't doing well. It was I wasn't really confident in the stuff I was putting out, you know, because I was so quick to make them just like a piece of content. But then like once I realized, oh, you know, if I just put out a piece of content, a piece of work that I'm proud of, who cares if it's not doing well? I'm leaving that up, you know?
Right.
And then, you know, and it all comes back to, like you said, it's just about the quality.
Yeah.
You know?
It's also finding your voice, you know.
Finding my voice.
Literally for you.
Right.
Finding your inner voice. Like,
Yeah.
what are you doing, you know? And I
Right.
think social media is great in certain ways, but it's
a
such
tool, right? Yeah.
it's such a waste of time, and
Right.
it bombards you with too much information that, you know,
Yeah.
maybe our lizard brains aren't used to or should be.
I think so. Yeah. I
But
think we're all like,
yeah, if you stay true to your, you know, inner voice and you find it,
yeah.
and it's cool. You can kind of see on some Instagram or like some social media, you see people finding their
Yeah.
niche, and then they start going that way. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
You know, that's stuff that I like.
Yeah. I love
So,
that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I actually took Hung-Gar martial arts starting at like 11 to when I was like 17. You know, I never really thought about it much besides it giving me some sort of a discipline. But you know, listening to you talk, I feel like it almost like the martial art training that you had almost kind of gave you that confidence to like to have your own agency to like do whatever you want.
Yeah,
you know?
100%.
Like,
Yeah.
I think like for me that definitely had affected me too.
Yeah.
You know, just like feeling like confident in my own body.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I never
Yeah.
thought about that.
And,
yeah.
you know, it's not knowing whatever it is, it's
Right.
actually doing it. So that's the training, right? And the
Right.
discipline.
Yeah.
Like your knuckles aren't going to get, and your wrists not going to get strong to
Right.
impact unless you discipline
Yeah.
your knuckles and your wrist and all this other stuff. That's
Yeah.
why we do knuckle push-ups in Taekwondo. So your wrist doesn't tweak when you hit something, and then your two knuckles start to get really huge, and you know
Right,
they
then you got
become
some
you become a
freaking-
weapon, right?
You got
Yeah.
some, what do they call those things that you put on they punch people with? They slide on their fingers.
Oh, brass knuckles.
Oh, brass knuckles. Yeah, yeah.
I suggest not using those.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, we met because of Fat Buddha. I don't even know if I met you the night that I had my like music launch, like a Jala launch event party.
Right.
Yeah, I just remember it was I think it was Jeremy, the Heater Kid.
Mhm.
You know, he was like,
Big up to Jeremy.
yeah, big up to Jeremy. We were
Dream
looking for a
but don't
place.
sleep.
Dream but don't sleep. He don't sleep. He is working all the time.
Yeah.
But I think he was the one that suggested Fat Buddha as the space to do it.
Right.
And honestly, even to this day, bro, that was like one of the most fun nights of releasing my music.
Right.
Period.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know,
That's great.
such a good time.
Yeah. We're all about that. I'm all about that.
I think that was
Cultivating a lot of younger talent.
yeah.
Some people are a little nervous. They don't want to ask. But when it comes to like Asian community or whatever, you know, of course the bar has to make some money.
Yeah.
But and then I'll just explain it to most people. But we do a lot of events with different societies. Like you know, well, I don't. They keep calling them societies: Asian society, Taiwanese.
Sure.
You know.
Yeah. Different organizations.
Yeah, different
Yeah.
organizations. But we're always willing to host it because I feel like you know you need spots like that.
Yeah.
And most places are very transactional.
Right.
Right? Like,
Right.
well, how much money do you have?
I honestly
You know,
don't
there's
even
a bunch of
remember. Like, I don't think y'all charged us anything.
No,
I think
well,
y'all just
you
let
know,
us
we'll
rock.
Keep that quiet.
Yeah, yeah.
No, just kidding.
yeah. Just kidding.
No, I think
Yeah.
yeah, they were. I remember it pretty clearly. They were just like, "Oh, this kid, you know, he's doing music. He's releasing something. His name Bohan." I was like, "Okay, cool. You know, yeah, let's do it."
I mean, and just like being able to have the homies to pull up, like to have that cool spot to do it at.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, it was a cool jump off point for myself too, you know,
Right.
in terms of like my level of confidence grow, you know, and then like just to like manifest something in like physical form in like a location in New York City. It felt cool to say that. you know?
Yeah.
So I'm really grateful to have been able to do
Anytime.
that there.
We'll do your next one.
And yeah, hell yeah. And well, actually, you know, because of that, like, you know, like that kind of endearment I felt towards the spot. I remember, maybe I was in China or I was still here, but I remember seeing you post on whether it was TikTok or IG. I think maybe this was during COVID, and Fat Buddha was either struggling or shutting down.
Yeah.
And you were reaching out to the community to help out.
Yeah.
And then I think the next thing I realized was there was Hidden Tiger.
Right.
So can you tell me about, you know, if it's okay, like, do you mind sharing
Yeah.
what happened with Fat Buddha and like the transition into Hidden Tiger?
100%. There's, you know, obviously we were doing really well as Fat Buddha. Pandemic really kicked our butt, you know, enough to have me say, hey, you need a little help here.
Yeah.
And that took a long time for me to be like, hey, you know, I need some help over here.
Right.
So we, during the pandemic, just trying to figure out stuff, you know, trying to keep the doors open, trying to have some sort of income coming in. I just kept pivoting.
Right.
My ankles still hurt from all that pivoting, right? And
Breaking your own ankles.
yeah, so then, you know, there's the paperwork for the liquor license came through, and I was like, okay, great, let's just do it, you know. And kept pivoting, and then they're like, oh, you never renewed your license. I was like, no, I have, you know, and I'll show the documents. But then they were like, no. And then the community board there, they were saying, oh, you guys have always been a problem,
Yeah.
And they're like, you know, you have to reapply for your liquor license. And this is while I'm dealing with the landlord on one side,
Yeah.
and then dealing with this, right?
Right.
So it's out of my control somewhat, but I was like, well, we'll reapply. And then, you know, all these people on the community board, unfortunately, they're not really in the nightlife community at all. There used to be like one or two people that sat on the committee that were part of, you know, they owned a business, they understand, you know, hey, it's not our intention to have problems. And, you know, we had an automatic renewal anyway.
Right.
But they bring up something from 2000 and, you know, when I first opened up the bar.
Right.
And they're
Somebody
like,
was loud on the outside.
yeah, and then we signed the agreement that
Yeah.
we will implement this. The doors will be closed at 10. And this is like going back to 2014 or something, right? And then I'm
Right.
like, It's 2022,
It's
23.
it's like that fight with your girlfriend, and she's like, "Remember that time 5 years ago?"
Yeah. Probably gotta date better people. But yeah, it was just kind of like, so, and part of me was like, all right, well, if the neighborhood doesn't want Fat Buddha, then what am I gonna do? Like, so I just, and we were kind of moving towards a little more elevated space anyway. So 2019, there was a flood from upstairs. Somebody had a fire in their apartment. They couldn't shut off the water, so then we had to gut our place because fear of mold.
Right.
At first, I was like, "Oh, it's all right. We'll just open up the next day." They're like, "No, you can't do that because of mold and you know all this. You're insured, but and the insurance wasn't enough money. Put my neck on the line to reopen." And then we opened up just in time for the pandemic to kind of hit. So we had a really great weekend, One night it was like, pretty packed out. Saturday, we hit like 15K. I was like, all right, this is great. We're going to be able to pay off our debt, And the following week is the pandemic. And then I was like, oh my God. All right, let's try to do this and that. Anyway, fast forward. So during that time of, turmoil, trying to give the community something else, kind of pivoting to, I decided to open up a cafe in the front and have a speakeasy door into the back. So then I'm like looking at the blueprint, trying to figure out, the bar's already built. So I have to demo the storefront, which looks, it was just red door and, blocked off. You couldn't see it. So I was like, let me do something a little brighter, a little bit more welcoming. And then I thought of my son. His name is Joa, which means I like. So I was like, oh, Cafe Joa, like I like cafe. So looked up the Instagram, name was available, everything. There's no other place really called Cafe Joa. So I just moved forward with it. And, while I'm doing it, it's kind of, in hindsight, just keeping my mind busy and where I'm still creating, but I'm also kind of, dealing with the issues that I'm dealing with, right? Monetary. Like, it's all monetary. It's not really anything else. So, really kind of pushing it, waiting for this liquor license. It took like a year and a half. We finally got the get-go, the green light. And then I was going to call it like Behind the Bean,
What's Behind the Bean?
The Den. But there's Den Social, so I was like, I can't really call it Den because the logo is a tiger. So my mom had a dream of 2 baby tigers, and then her friend at church says, "Oh, you're gonna have 2 grandsons." She's like, "Oh no, that's crazy." And then I call my mom, and then I tell her, "Hey, we're having, don't tell anybody. It's not 3 months yet, but we're pregnant. We're gonna have a boy." And she starts like crying on the phone, saying that's a miracle. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, I have a daughter already. It's kind of like, what is a miracle? And then later that weekend, I find out that my mom had just spoken to my brother a couple hours before me. Looking at my brother's phone, and we're exchanging information. He's like, we're having a son. I'm like, we're having a son.
Oh, wow.
Same due date.
Wow.
And I said, did you tell mom? Yeah, I called her on Tuesday. I'm like, shut up. Show me your phone. And he showed it, and he had called her a couple hours before me. That's why it was a miracle to her. And then we didn't hear about this story until, unfortunately, she passed away. Her church friend told us this story after she passed.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Wait, who told her that? Who told her that she was gonna have to?
Her best friend at church.
Wow.
Yeah. So then after, when my mother passed, she came and told us this whole story, and we were just like, "What? That's so amazing," And unfortunately, my mom passed from MERS, or she went in with just like kind of a cold. Then she has pneumonia. Oh, she can't breathe on her own. Oh, we have to put the breathing thing. And I was just like, happened so fast. And then she never got to see the kids. While that was happening, so I'm processing all this. So then I was like, I'm gonna open up a cafe. It'll be a little baby tiger, and then the mom tiger's in the back.
I love that.
So
the hidden tiger.
She always wanted Fat Buddha to not sell alcohol. I was like, I don't think that's going to work. That's not a really great business plan, Mom. But, mocktails are kind of getting more bigger. So I was thinking, I'm going to do a cocktail bar. We'll feature a lot of mocktails. So while waiting for our liquor license, open up a mocktail bar in the back. Didn't really sustain. It was like hemorrhaging money each week, and I'm trying to keep the place open. So
you got to make money on that.
Close that down. And I'm like, if I don't get my liquor license by this date, I set a date. then I'm shutting down. And it was December 1st. So on Thanksgiving, the week after Thanksgiving, we go to the SLA, we get approved.
Nice.
And then I'm like, so when do we get our license? I'm asking my attorneys. They're like, it could take like up to a month. I go, well, that's not good.
Yeah.
Because if I don't get it by December 1st, I'm closing down.
Right.
And they're like, what are you talking about? You waited all this time. I'm like, I just don't have it, in me, and I don't have the money.
Right.
The next day, it shows up in my email,
Boom.
our liquor license. So I'm like, first, I was like, this is amazing,
Yeah.
what a lesson I've learned. Then on the other side, I was like, oh, crap. I have so much work to do.
Yo,
so
that's
much
real.
work to do with no money. I put up my entire liquor collection up on the shelves.
Wow.
Tried to figure out what to do with some of the stock that were in there. And so now we're surviving. We just had our 1-year birthday this past Thanksgiving, and then the cafe, I looked at the business, the number, like the date of actual being open legally, and it's the same birthday as Fat Buddha, which is August.
And but it just happened to line up.
It just all happened to line up.
That's crazy.
Divine intervention, or whatever it is. It's just kind of just kind of letting things flow. And of course, there was a lot of doubt in my brain. I'm like, why am I opening up a cafe in the front?
Yeah.
Even now, sometimes I'm like, damn, this cafe is such a it's
Pain
a
in
lot
my
of
ass.
work. Yeah, I mean, theoretically, you think, oh, that's cool because you have 2 streams of revenue, but you don't realize it's actually 2 full-time businesses running, even though it's just for the daytime.
Yeah.
It takes just as much bandwidth in your brain to keep it open and try to run it as it does for the later night.
I bet.
Yeah.
I mean, they food and beverage business is one of the hardest.
Yeah.
Probably worse than music business.
I don't know. I think it's about same success failure rate.
Yeah.
Maybe it's harder in the music business actually, but it doesn't take so much capital to start up your music business.
Yeah. It's easier to I guess to record a song. Yeah. Well, so I mean, I think one thing that I found interesting just now was that you named the 2 establishments, the new ones, from stories with your family.
Yeah.
And a lot of my music, 90% of it is about my own experience and my family.
Right.
And so much that there's people that online, they're like, all dude talks about is like in China there's haters online, they're like Bohan keywords, mom, dad, stepdad, love.
Right.
I'm like, whatever, bro, that's me.
What are your keywords?
Yeah, exactly.
What are you doing with your life?
Yeah.
It's always easy to point.
But I like that. It's what you do is so much inspired by family.
I think that everything has to come from your heart,
Yeah.
And it's obviously everything has a story and some sort of meaning behind it. So I could try to embrace it, even though it's painful.
Would you call yourself a storyteller?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I'm an artist.
Hell yeah.
So everything I do is art.
Right.
When I realized that, then I was like, oh, this is great.
Wow.
I'm always creating.
Yes.
I'm an artist. I have to create.
Yeah.
So even when there's nothing going on or I'm waiting, I'm helping others and I'm drawing on my tablet. You know? I bought an iPad.
Yeah.
I downloaded the Procreate app.
Yeah.
You guys can sponsor me if you want. And I designed the bar, designed every aspect of the bar on that Procreate tablet. I'm doing our logo for the hidden tiger. It says Fat Tiger, but it's Korean letters. I try to make it look like the stamp. And cool. I designed all that on Procreate,
Wow.
Yeah.
Did your own thing? Did your own visuals?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I make all the flyers and I do all the social media.
On Canva or what? What do you use?
No,
Canva?
I use Photoshop mostly.
Okay. All right, cool.
Canva's so
OG.
frustrating to me for some
Really?
reason.
I mean, look, Canva is for people that don't know how to use Photoshop, like myself.
Right. And sometimes a couple of the flyers are done on Canva.
Okay.
Big up.
Cool.
No disrespect to Canva, but I just had a heart. I'm like, I'm just trying to import this PNG. How come the logo is not clear? How come this and that? So
yeah, I hear that.
It's just like learning a new platform. So
yeah,
I'm like, I just need my laptop. But I'll be away for like a weekend, and I'll be like, I need to whip up a flyer.
Yeah.
So, but they came out pretty good.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
What was the process behind naming Fat Buddha?
That one's pretty straightforward. I mean, I was gonna call it Enter the Dragon. I was gonna call it, something with
Enter the
Buddha.
Dragon.
Yeah, just just
Yeah.
for fun, just like
Hell
whatever.
yeah.
I'm a huge Bruce Lee fan.
Entering the Dragon.
Entering
right
the
now.
Dragon, yeah. So, and then Enter the Dragon's actually a video cassette that I watched nonstop as a child. That and the Blues Brothers. So I'm like 7 years
Wow.
old watching.
You got
6
both
years old.
sides.
Yeah, I was just watching it. Yeah, Aretha Franklin, all the
Yeah.
soul, and then the martial arts, and
Yeah.
I was just like, oh, this is amazing, right?
Wow.
So when I was trying to come up with a name, obviously I had a list. You know, there's pre-Chat GPT, right? I
Yeah.
need some names,
Yeah.
even like. So one of the, after I purchased it, actually I didn't name it Fat Buddha until even after, like up until the 11th hour, because one of the guys that I purchased the bar from, he was like, hey, I know it's your bar, but is it okay if I come in and take one of the Buddha statues? My mom gave it to me. And I was like, absolutely. I don't, I was kind of insulted. I was like, why do you think I'm that guy who's like, no,
Yeah.
it's my business,
Right.
I was like, of course you could take it. So there's a Thai gold statue one, So he took that, and I'm like, what about this little fat guy on the ground?
Yeah.
And he goes, nah, I don't know. That was like here, from the previous like place where they, it used to be a rotary sushi restaurant.
Yeah.
Which, if it were a rotary sushi right now, you'd make a killing right there. But they were 20 years ahead of their game.
Yeah.
16 years.
Right.
So then I was like, looked at the little guy, and he's a big dude. So I
Yeah,
was like,
yeah.
oh, that's Fat Buddha. And I was like, asked some Buddhist friends, is this an insult if I call my bar Fat Buddha?
Because they don't drink. Because the idea of like Buddhists don't drink.
Buddhism, yeah. I was
Right,
just like,
right.
is this Buddhism? I
Right.
didn't really know.
Right.
I literally had to Google Fat Buddha to figure out it's not Budddah, it's HA. So
Right,
Buddha. So I didn't know, much.
Right.
I mean, my friends are Buddhists. I went
Yeah.
to a couple things with them.
Yeah.
They chant in front of their little wood box at the temple thing. So I was like,
Yeah,
all
yeah.
right,
A little shrine
Yeah, they were
situation.
like, invited me to go check it out, learn about it. I was like, yeah, it's not really for me, but
Right. Yeah,
kudos.
yeah.
So I asked, two of my friends, and they were like, no, that's an amazing name. Actually, it's like he's
Yeah.
like kind of like a Santa Claus of. Santa Claus has nothing to do with Christmas, really.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like
yeah,
the
yeah.
original
Yeah.
birth of Christ. So I was like, oh, okay, cool. So that's how Fat Buddha came along.
Serendipity, really.
Yeah,
That one
and then
thing
I asked
left over.
I asked my friend to illustrate the head
Mm.
as our logo,
Mhm.
and then we just kind of used a regular font, and then Futura 2000 wrote Fat Buddha for us,
Dope.
which was like kind of sealed
No
the
shit.
whole
That's so cool.
trinity of the
Wow.
It brought the room together, kind of like
Wow.
the Big Lebowski. So
mean,
the logo and then Futura's writing,
Yeah.
it just kind of put the stamp on the place, and then people were like, people who were graffiti heads or street art, they were like, wow, that's Futura did that. I'm like, yeah, it's
Yeah.
pretty amazing, like how
Yeah,
he
that's
just
pretty
blessed
fucking
us
cool.
with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I was already a huge Futura fan.
Sure.
But then after meeting him, he's such a nice guy. I was like, damn, like, this
Yeah.
is great. It's, you should meet your heroes.
Yeah.
You should meet
Yeah.
the people that you really like.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, even if they turn out to be dicks, it's good to know.
Well,
that,
yeah,
like,
yeah.
so sometimes you don't need to idolize everybody like that.
I don't
you
really
know?
idolize anybody.
Yeah, well, that was one of my questions growing up. If you had any, I guess Bruce Lee.
Bruce Lee,
Right,
Jimi
right.
Hendrix.
Okay. Oh, Hendrix.
Yeah.
Oh, I just
But
finished.
They were not around. so.
I just finished reading one of Hendrix's biographies.
Oh, yeah. Catch a Fire? Oh, no, that's Bob Marley.
yeah.
I like Bob Marley, too. Obviously.
Yeah, it's just called Wild Thing.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Man, like, I mean, we got to talk about Jimmy another time, but like, that's so cool. I love that.
I loved
I
Hendrix.
mean, did you like, what was did you play any instruments or anything?
Not really. My mom made me take piano and
Right,
violin.
Yeah.
Very embarrassing pictures of me holding up a violin. It's cute now because
Yeah.
growing up I was like, Mom, don't show that to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
But no, I just DJing became the turntables became my instrument.
Yeah, yeah.
and beat
But
matching.
something about Hendrix is cool. Got you. Like,
Yeah, just the creativity, his attitude, his humbleness,
Mm.
and yeah, his approach to, psychedelics and music, I just loved it. I was like, oh, this is great. It's you're experiencing
Very
the Jimi
new
Hendrix
stuff.
experience. Yeah, the experience. So
Wow. I mean, a lot of my, like, I feel like, I'll say you're like one generation before me, right? Like, as a lot of my friends in your generation, they are much more like hip hop heads,
Yeah.
like not later on got into hip hop, they kind of, like, so it's cool that, like, you're like, tapped into different kind of music. And to be honest, as I'm having these like conversations with people, I realize, the Asian American experience is so wide, and like
there's a lot of us.
there's a lot of us, but there's also like there's so like I was talking to Jeff Kwan from Canal Sound and Light, right? He was born in 77 in New York, and his family has had that sound and lighting business on Canal Street. He's like, yeah, I never really thought about myself being Asian at all. Like, it's like,
well, that during that time, it's
Right.
You're part of the melting pot theory.
right.
So
okay.
people, growing up, your culture is not that important. It's about being American, Americanized, and melting pot. We're all the same.
Right.
But that doesn't really work. Then it became multiculturalism, which is your gen, which is like, oh, proud to be Asian, da da da. There's some dudes that are older Asians that are like, who cares, right? Because they grew up in that melting pot theory. We're all American. You'll hear these, in the rhetoric.
Yeah.
But then now it's multiculturalism. So it's shifted from melting pot to multiculturalism. So in the beginning, a lot of, guys my age, our generation, they're, grew up embarrassed about certain things. Cause
About
it's
being
like,
Asian or certain things?
yeah. Like,
Right.
what's that smelly thing on your counter? I'm like, oh, that's kimchi. Bro, that's amazing. They're like, oh, yeah. Now it's cool.
Right.
Now it's cool to be Korean.
For sure.
It's great.
Yeah.
What a time we live in. So,
Yeah.
but growing up, it wasn't really about that. It was like, being Americanized,
But like, supposedly American is, like you said, this melting pot idea. But it almost seems like at some point to be more American is be less Asian, be more white.
Yeah, I mean, the melting pot is towards immigrants, basically, right?
Right.
It's not really towards the
Right.
white
But white
person
people are
in-
immigrant. I mean, people come here from Germany like 2 weeks ago.
yeah. Everybody has a short memory, right? But
Well,
I mean, me growing up, it was like, oh, if you're Irish or, this, you were kind of looked down upon.
right.
Now,
right.
then as time goes by,
Right, they've become
they
more.
become more acclimated, and
Right.
they're like looking at other people.
But you
like,
could argue
oh,
we're still not looked at like as that, right? Like,
I don't know.
You
We
know?
live, my uncle said one time, the only culture America really has is hate and racism. So other than that, there's no real culture. Like, there's no American culture,
That's deep.
really.
that's
So I was
really
like,
deep.
oh, and this is like me growing up. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, it kind of makes sense. I mean, I dealt with racism all the time. As a little
Sure.
kid, you look funny and throw a basketball in my face. But, I was also a trained fighter. So I was like, oh, I'll
Right.
go up to him and kick them in the balls,
Fuck yeah,
clap
dude.
their ears. And
Hell
then
yeah.
I'd be like, not too hard because I would die.
Yeah.
But I was just like, enough to ring
Yeah.
their face. And,
You're owning
teacher
your
come
space.
over and I'd be like, oh, his stomach hurts. And I walk away. Be like,
Yeah,
I'm going
yeah.
to get you tomorrow too. But,
Yeah, yeah.
it made me into the person I am, which is, kind of aggressive.
Yeah.
Like in my brain. Everybody meets me, they're like, oh, he's mad chill. But if somebody says something, I'll be like, what the fuck you just, like
Right.
Brooklyn comes out in me and I'll be like,
That defense
what'd you say?
mechanism
Yeah,
comes
what'd you
out.
say? Like protecting whoever I'm with. And you want to clap? Like, let's go, but a lot of therapy has made me calm down.
Right.
Kids. And my son, it's amazing because his school is mostly Asian.
Yeah.
He doesn't have to deal with anything that I had to deal with.
Right.
Right? I remember 5 years old getting bullied, getting in trouble for like
Yeah.
standing up for a girl,
Yeah.
and yeah, it's nice to see. And sometimes I'll tell him like, oh, Appa is sometimes really, I used to get really angry as a kid. I don't want you
Yeah.
to be like that.
Right.
I want you to be nice,
Right. I mean, it's like you said, like some of the therapy might have helped you stay more calm, but the therapy was necessary because you had to learn these fight or flight instincts because of the stuff that you had to face.
Yeah,
right.
In hindsight, you can't really control other people, but it was just the environment, and that's how I was raised. I grew up like
Yeah.
and kids in high school like, dude, Cliff, there's no racism. I'd be like,
right.
I'm listening to Public Enemy. I'm like, pretty sure there is.
Yeah,
you guys live in a bubble.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely, I definitely think like y'all's generation just have it much more of like almost like a, much more understanding of an attitude, because you've gone through like almost like full circle, going from like, at one point we were just trying to fit in, and now it's like we have the luxury of finding more about like our culture,
and it's okay not to fit in.
Right, and it's okay not to fit in now. Yeah. And that's funny. It's like now that you have the luxury to figure out more about your culture, and then it's like it's at a point I was like, who cares?
I wouldn't have fit in if my whole class. If I grew up in Korea, I would be getting hit with a stick all the time because I'm not paying attention. Because I'm a creator. I'm not. I don't follow. I'm a leader. That's I'm a leader. Period. That's it. I know I do what I do.
Yeah.
One preschool teacher said something about my son coming in, like, "Oh, here's a little troublemaker," and I looked at her and I go, and I was like, "All right, be calm." Came back later, like during the day, and I said, "Hey, don't ever call my son that." I was like, "My son is a leader. He doesn't follow all the time. That's because he's a leader. Don't put a name on my son. Not even joking
like that.
Not even joking." I was like, because I'm gonna have a serious problem with you guys. So they're like, we're so sorry. We never meant that. And the teacher almost cried. I didn't mean that. I was like, I understand.
Right.
But the way I'm raised,
Yeah.
I'm raising a leader.
Yeah.
I'm not raising just a little boy.
Yeah.
That happens to look and act like me. I know his brain is exactly like my brain.
Yeah.
We have ADHD. We have all these things. We have, and I
that.
told my son, you're a Ferrari. You're an amazing, strong car. But I'm your brakes. I'm teaching you to put brakes on your body. Like hey, it's time for bed. Start to pump your brakes a little, right?
How to use this engine the best way.
Yeah, 100%.
This machine.
Yeah.
And I love that you let the teacher know, man. I mean, kids, like they might not, right? Like they might not react. Yeah. But like if they hear being labeled that, sooner or later they believe it.
Oh yeah.
And, so I'm glad.
I did that too.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, for me.
Right. So I'm glad that you can be that kind of parent. I think a lot of, I guess maybe I'm finding myself out to be wrong. I talk to more people, but in my mind, a lot of the Asian parents are not gonna let the teacher know stuff like that. Most of the time they go home and be like, the teacher say you're a troublemaker. Now you're in trouble. Like that dynamic versus the dynamic that you have. It's
like
completely
Asian
different.
Parents and their kids. There's always a huge disparity because of generation. So usually the younger kids, they don't really appreciate their elders until later. Then they understand, like, oh, they came here like this. Their parents were much harsher on them. Right. So they kind of like level the road. Yeah. Then put down the gravel. And then I'm paving the road for my son so he can ride his bicycle over it. Right. So there's layers to everything. So even with my son, sometimes I find myself being like, tighten up, toughen up.
Sure.
Like, we don't do it. Now it's like, hey, your emotions matter. But right now at this moment, you have to do this. Doesn't matter whether you want to do it or not. You got to try and do your best. Sometimes he does it, sometimes he doesn't. Doesn't matter. Give him flowers daily, and he'll remember maybe 1% of everything. Less than 1%.
Right.
But that's where
But I think it all goes in the subconscious, though.
Yeah.
Like,
if you hold on to it.
No, but I mean like the effort that he recognizes that you're putting in. Like he might not like remember everything, but I feel like over the years the fact that you were constantly putting in effort, that stays with him. Yeah. And I think
I'm so fortunate.
That's awesome. How old is he?
7.
Oh wow.
Yeah. But he's like, he's the most amazing kid in the world,
Right.
But I feel like me. And I see other, like even adopted kids, they feel like they're missing something. I'm like, you know, you grew up in a nice nurturing home, or let's say, you know, you keep seeing your mom and they mention stuff about your weight or whatever. It's just like, you have to look at them and be like, they're just people trying to survive. And that's their way of telling you that they care about you, that they love you.
Right. Yeah.
Instead of taking it as an insult.
Right.
But I could imagine that'd be really difficult if somebody was like, hey, you're fat all the time when you're a girl.
Yeah,
and your parent are doing that. But,
yeah.
you know, it just builds up a lot of anger and animosity.
Well, that happens all the time, right? Like, grandkids go home.
The stereotypes are real.
Right. Yeah.
The tiger mom.
You know, so, yeah, you know, like, I've thought about stuff like this in terms of, you know, with my generation and our parents, like, do we try to get our parents to do, like, some of the perspective shifting, some of the, you know, therapy work, or is it like more graceful to, you know, just accept the relationship that you are able to have with them,
right? And,
you know, like take your, you know, like morals and values elsewhere, you know, just like love your mother as is, you know, like. And I think for me, like, I think I started off trying to, you know, get my mom to be on the same page as me and stuff. And then I realized, like, she don't need to do that.
She don't need to do that.
She already did so much.
You can play her music and she'll be like, what is this trash?
It's exactly. Fine. Yeah.
Okay.
And that's totally okay.
Yeah. You don't want your mom in the club.
Yeah. I remember one time, exactly. I remember one time someone was like, yo, does your mom go to your shows? I was like, you know, when I used to go up to Apollo to do amateur nights, she, like, took a bus from Boston to New York by herself, amazing. Found her way to Harlem. I was like, that's all she ever needed to do. After that, she didn't need to.
She can do that once.
That's it. Exactly. Yeah. You know.
Yeah, that's a tremendous amount of support.
Yeah, I mean, so shout out to moms.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah. So being in, you know, I guess now that I know, besides food and beverage, you've also in the music business. And how do you feel like? How would you put the power, or how do you see the power of music and food connecting different cultures and of immigrants?
It's amazing. I mean, you know, the amazing thing about food is you can put the same ingredients in front of you and me, but the outcome will be completely different, right?
Right.
So that's where, and I feel like you understand people better through music and food. It's like the easiest segue. Learning about other people's culture through food and everything. So some people, you know, when they ask about Korean food, I'll be like, well, in Asian cuisine, the food is just kind of all comes to the table. In America, everything gets better. It's like the idea, like Asia is like everything's kind of like an egg.
Oh, like an appetizer.
Appetizer, your main. The dessert always at the end.
Yeah.
Everything's getting better.
Yeah.
Welcome to America. And Asian food is just like,
way
boom.
To think about it.
Yeah, or watching like movies, and I'm like, why are they all eating out of a Chinese container, just like one thing?
Right.
Yeah. That's so awkward to me. It's like one of my. It used to be a huge. It would bother me when I would watch it. That and empty coffee cups. Like, just put a little water so that you see some movement, there's something in it. But when they're, like, hanging it and they're like this and they're talking, like, that cup is empty.
Yeah.
And why are you eating one dish out of a Chinese, you know, and it becomes, like, glamorized almost, too, right?
Right.
Staying up late in the office and everybody. But the Asian way is like, yo, we're all sharing all of this, right? It's more communal.
Yeah.
Right?
That is funny.
But, yeah, it's a huge problem.
It is funny when I like once nowadays I don't really see it anymore, but I definitely remember seeing, you know, groups of like white people at a Chinese restaurant. They all have their own
dish.
You know?
Yeah.
And it's like, it's comical, but it's also endearing because, you know, they're trying it out. You know, they don't know what they're doing, but they're trying to do what they can.
But
you know,
now they'll watch this podcast and realize the absurdity of it all.
Yeah. Oh, I'm trying to add to it, you know. Yeah, that's like one thing that I remember coming to New York 2010. I was 17. I was coming for school, and you know, I was trying to go on dates and impress girls, and I was taking them to restaurants, and at that time really the only nice restaurants were like Italian, French, or whatever, you know, like I don't even remember if Shion's was a thing. Maybe it was starting to be Shion's a thing. There was one Sichuan restaurant called Hot Kitchen on like 2nd Ave and like 7th Street that had $7.50 lunch specials that had double cooked pork and rice and a soup. I remember that was banging.
Right.
But
that's
other
a
than
smart date.
Oh man. But no, but I didn't take him there. I took him to the Italian restaurants and stuff, and I was thinking, man, like, why is a bowl of pasta $30? Like, this is crazy, you know?
Yeah, that's the argument. Like dumplings are cheap, but then your raviolis are mad expensive.
Well, but now, Sichuan food is freaking expensive, and I'm kind of upset, because it's so expensive,
Yeah.
Like,
Well, the
but
answer
I'm
to
glad
that
that,
question is like, why is this more expensive? It's like because they figure out that they can.
right.
do that.
Well, look, I'm glad that we're at least we have that upper echelon, status now.
Yeah, there's a lot of really fine dining Korean now.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Obviously,
I went.
sushi.
My friend took me to Goat.
Oh yeah, goat.
How do you say that?
Goat.
Goat.
Goat means
Goat.
flour.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was freaking fantastic.
Mhm.
But yeah, what was I saying? Oh, that was just a tangent about that. Yeah.
Well,
see.
on dating, as
Yeah.
a young Asian guy, I would say just stay true to who you are.
Yeah.
Don't try to pretend to be whatever.
Yeah, well, I definitely pretended to be a lot of things
Everybody
for
does.
many years.
Yeah, everybody does.
One of the funniest things when I first came to the States, my mom was telling me to stay away from Chinese girls, stay away from Asian girls, stay away from Chinese girls. Like, like all they want is money. Blah 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 blah. So like growing up, I in hindsight, I was discussing, that like in hindsight, like everyone that I dated had like very white features. Even like the half Asian girls that had like white features.
Mhm.
Like, and nowadays I definitely can't like.
Is
Now-
she still like that?
Is she?
Yeah.
No,
Your
no,
mom.
no.
She's
No,
like,
she's
why
not.
don't you just get married? Find a nice Chinese
Well,
girl.
she's-
She doesn't say that.
She that's the thing. She's gotten to a point where she's like, oh, I'm clear about it now. Oh, you don't even need to get married. Just find someone, have some kids, and I'll raise them for you.
Right.
I'm like, Mom, you're not clear at all. You're more and more confused. You
Well,
know?
she's just getting older.
She's getting older, but like I also it really helped when I like kind of asked her. I was like, hey, look, you've been asking me if I want, when I'm gonna have kids, but you actually never asked me if I want to have kids, and I've never even asked myself that because I just have always assumed that I need to have kids to satisfy you. You know?
Right. Right.
And once I like was able to like put it rationally to her like that, she was like, oh yeah, I guess you're right. It's just like, and then
And that's pretty un-Asian of your mom to accept that.
well, I mean, that's the thing. It took many years for me to calm down to a point where I can like speak to her and not trigger myself.
Right.
But yeah, once I was able to like talk to her calmly, she no longer treats me as like somebody that she can't talk to without me blowing up.
Right.
Then we can have like a rational conversation.
Yeah.
But she still, is pushing for me to have kids.
Yeah, of course. Kids
But-
are the most amazing thing.
Yeah.
It makes you become a different person.
Yeah, and I told her like I want to have a family,
Right.
but I'm not gonna just find someone to pop some kids out. I'm not gonna marry and you just raise a kid,
Yeah.
Because she's like, look, I just had you. I dropped you off with your grandparents, and you turned out
Different
fine.
world. Yeah. Different world.
I was like, I don't know if I turned out fine, but
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's I think later in life, like in your 30s, as you start reaching that
Yeah.
point, it's a good time to start getting like therapy.
yeah,
Yeah, like at least
Yeah.
once a week, you talk to somebody that's on your side, help
Yeah.
you navigate. Without therapy, like while I was going through all that stuff with Fat Buddha, and
yeah,
I could barely pay for the therapy, but
Right.
it was important because it kind of kept me somewhat balanced,
Mhm.
or at least realize when I'm not balanced or reacting as opposed to reacting.
Mm.
So I'm a big proponent of it. I've,
Yeah.
and a couple people have called me, confiding in me like, hey, I feel like I'm messing up in my life, or what am I, and I'd say, you're trying to do a podcast with, an old like tape recorder.
right. Your map is outdated.
There's so much equipment out there for you to succeed, to be happy every day. Like at least, you're not going to have great days. Obviously life is tough. That's how it is. But you can at least give yourself kudos. Be proud of yourself. Once a week is great. It's amazing for your brain. You think about all the things you've accomplished, and then you can have somebody to talk through.
Yeah.
And, it just puts a lot of things into perspective, because it's like the narration goes to what's going to make you happy, like what will make you happy. And clearly you have already thought about extensively about how you're going to communicate with your mother, right? Because you could just be like,
but that helped.
stonewalled.
Therapy helped me to get there, though. That's the thing. Like you said,
right.
Before, I was trying for years. I'm like, I just want to get along with my mom. I don't know why I can't. You know, I couldn't figure it out on my own.
Right.
You know, and I needed that help.
Yeah. Even my it's a pretty personal topic, but my brother, we didn't really get along that great, and especially after my mother passed, and so I wrote him an email. I said, "Hey, you're my brother. I really wish that we would get along better. I really wish this." I just kind of, laid it out in an email, and then the next time we hung out, it wasn't dead silence, really, But a lot of our people that come to Fat Buddha, our mutual friends, they think that we're thick as thieves,
right.
which a lot of times we butt heads,
right?
More butting head than anything,
Yeah.
So I think that the therapy really helps you try to achieve your goals. Like you want a better relationship, you got to talk it out. And what is your role in all of that and all this other stuff? Without getting too deep, right? Really, but
but
I do
real.
think it's really important because if you're like an artist and you don't really fit in any mold, really, right? You break the mold a lot, then you need that support.
Yeah. I think like even beyond that, I think no matter what you do, I think life is much more pleasant to live when you have much more of awareness. You know, like even if things are not going well in your career wise, you're a much wholer person. You're not like, oh, my entire identity is this rapper. If my career isn't going well, I'm a failure.
Right.
Like now I know that like I'm a valuable friend. I'm a valuable children to my mom, I'm a value to myself. And a lot of times, like, to be honest, like that kind of like when I have experienced like growth in the recent years, that is so exciting to me. It almost makes like music not as exciting in a sense. Like this idea of like
that tension.
Yeah, exactly. You know what I mean, though. Like so, but it's been interesting for me to find a balance of like doing more like personal work versus work for,
Right.
But yeah, I'm glad that we can be out here being proponents of therapy, especially for people that look like us. It's not something we talk about, right?
Yeah,
like,
especially my gen. It's like tighten up,
right?
Stop being a puss. It's like
when I told my mom I went to therapy the first time, she goes, "Oh, like what's wrong with their body?" She thought I meant like a physical therapy. Like
it is a physical therapy.
It is a physical therapy. The
Mental
mind is part of part of the body for sure. Yeah, I mean, like last thing I'll say about this dating thing, but I definitely find myself, now can't really imagine being with somebody that don't speak Chinese. Whereas before I was like, oh yeah, I'll be with anybody that I can communicate with in English, But now there's like, I can't really imagine that, like.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are like, growing up, my mom would be like, oh, it'd be nice if you found a nice Korean girl. And of course, me growing up, I was like, I don't, Mom, I like girls. It doesn't, to me, it didn't matter. But then later on, it's nice to have, when you're dating, that cultural aspect. That, I don't have to explain to somebody, hey, if my mom comes in,
For sure.
you should act this way, And generally that's, the cultural side of it becomes a lot easier, I could never imagine myself dating someone back then, and they're like, why do I have to take my shoes off? I'm like, well, go stand outside then.
Right.
Or, why do I have to do this and why do that? I'm like, it's just a cultural thing. Like, a lot of times it'll be spoken about. I'll explain, like, you'll see this. And especially in martial arts, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, you're going to see a lot of dudes bowing to me, and don't get weirded out, or I'm going to bow to my uncle and say, good afternoon, sir. But he's my uncle. But in martial arts, and it's a lot more respectful than just regular Korean vibes.
Yeah.
Korean vibe, you can just kind of go like that,
Right.
But Taekwondo is like deep bow,
Very formal.
Yeah, more formal. Yes, sir, while we're just eating dinner.
Right. But in Korean. Or do you say in English? Yes, sir, in English.
I say it in English.
Gotcha.
Yeah. My Korean's terrible. My Taekwondo is good, though.
Do you go back to Korea when you get a chance?
I went back when I first opened up the bar. That was a great time, but I haven't been back since.
When you first opened up Fat Buddha.
Yeah.
Oh, so it's been a minute.
2011, I think I went.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a minute.
I mean, I hear. I actually, because I was based in Asia, based in China for a long time, and I was bouncing around for shows. For whatever reason, I haven't made it to Korea yet.
Right.
But I mean, like all my friends, they go to Seoul all the time. Like,
Right.
they're just
Right.
popping
Well, they live
out
right there.
They live right there, but like they just go and hang out. They're like
Yeah.
people in
a lot of
Seoul
fun.
are like living in the future type shit.
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of Asian countries I want to visit.
What are some of them?
I've been to Macau.
Okay.
That's as close as China I've been to.
Gotcha. Oh, you
but
never been
I'd
to
like
Hong Kong?
Oh no, I was in Hong Kong. Sorry,
Okay.
I was in Hong Kong.
Gotcha. Yeah,
and then
yeah.
Macau.
Okay.
So that was really dope.
Yeah. Was Hong Kong like a big Manhattan Chinatown vibe to you? Did
Just
I feel like
yeah, very mall centric. I took a shuttle up to the mountain.
Yeah,
where,
yeah.
It's like
Victoria's
nature.
Peak?
Yeah,
Or
I
no?
believe that's what it's
Okay,
called.
yeah.
And there's the first day I got there, my friend took me up there.
Yeah.
And then coming back down on the train thing, I
Yeah.
let like one older lady in front of me, and everybody just my
Yeah.
friends waiting.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, what took you so long?
Yeah,
I'm like,
yeah.
Oh, I let a little lady, and then
Yeah.
everybody just pushed
Yeah.
their way through, and I didn't feel like pushing. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
she's like, you can't do that in Hong Kong. I was like, no, I'm not going to change who I am. For,
Yeah. For sure. Cool.
But yeah, I mean, I'd like to check out Thailand. Want to go to Bali. Got a couple friends out there. I haven't been to Japan, since I was a little kid. So when I was visiting Korea, 2011, I was supposed to go to Japan, but then the earthquake and everything happened, so I rerouted to Hong Kong.
That was the Fukushima earthquake?
Yeah,
Got
yeah,
you.
yeah. So
Right.
my family were like, "Please don't go." And I'm like, "It's
Right.
okay, it's fine."
Right.
They're like, "It's not okay," and I was like, "All right."
Yeah,
so I
yeah,
went
yeah.
to
Probably a
Korea,
good
then I
choice.
went to Hong Kong, and then went
Do
to
you-
Macau a couple of days. It was
Do you
great.
still have a family or relatives in Korea?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean,
Gotcha.
my mother had like several brothers and sisters.
Mm.
My dad, same thing, like 8.
Got
We
it.
don't really keep in touch with the father side, but I have cousins that are kind of out there.
Got it. Very cool, man. Well, I mean, that's pretty much like all the questions I had. Like I was really just curious about your story.
What is
Yeah.
the Great Wall of America? What is that to you?
Yeah, so like, it's this question where you're really from.
Oh.
Yeah, and this idea that pretty much if you're Asian looking, specifically Asian, not as much like Spanish or other immigrants, that we do get this, at least I have, gotten this vibe that like, you're just like not really from here, even if you're a passport holder, even if you were born here, even if your family were born here. You know, I know they're just curious. They don't really mean harm.
Right.
When they say like, all right.
Well, it's the people that are asking, really.
Yeah, but to me, it's amazing that this question has become so subtle that this like xenophobic question, and like for me, the Great Wall of America literally is a metaphor for the barriers that face immigrants in America. And it's funny, I was talking to this guy last night at a bar. He's a bar owner. He's Korean. He's like in his like 60s, and I was just telling him about, because I had my tote bag, and he said, "Oh, Great Wall of America, what is that?" I was telling him about what it is. Oh, he's like, "Yeah, I never really thought about stuff like that, blah, blah." And we're drinking and drinking. He's like, "Yeah, I never really, I think like, I don't know. I don't really feel, un-American or an immigrant."
Probably need some therapy.
Well, that's the thing. So we're drinking and we're getting drunk, and then he goes, "Oh, what's crazy?" And he wasn't even saying this in relating to Great Wall. He goes, "Yo, some crazy shit happened New Year's Eve. I was walking home, and then these kids run up to me and go ching chong." I was like, "That's so random."
I would be like, "Bing bong."
Yeah, right. But I was like, "Yo, but you just said that you never felt anything like." He goes, "Oh, that's nothing. That's just."
He suppresses it.
Yeah. I think that's impossible to like not acknowledge that, like, oh, we've never felt anything like that,
Right.
like, but for me, like, a lot of my music is really like self therapy, really, like, for me, writing the song, Great Wall of America, it's not really about wanting anything from white people. You know, it's really like a reminder to self that like we have a seat at the table. You know, like different immigrants contributed to a different part of this country. Because like there is this vibe, and you know, and again, like you have shared in your story that there were moments where you were like, "Fuck you." You know, when people try to test you, right? Like
I'm always like that, yeah.
right. You know, and I'm and that's amazing. You know, but like, you know, for me, like even to this day, like there are times if I'm in an environment when I'm the only non-white person, I get a little stiff. You know, I get a little like I don't know. You know, like it's a little weird feeling. You know. And again, that probably has to do with, you know, the name callings growing up, you know, that I was like, oh, they just do that to Asian kids. Right. You know, like.
I only get like that if I sense a vibe from anybody.
Right.
So that's it.
Right. But that's the thing. I always sense a vibe from somebody. You know, like,
maybe. I mean, I've had dudes lean in on me.
Maybe it's the red hair. Maybe it's, you know, the tattoos. Maybe it's when I tell people I rap, you know, like they like expect me to be one way or another.
Right.
Know?
Right. You definitely draw more attention.
Yeah, maybe, you know. But like, you know, for me, like even the title or like the direction of the songs, like I mean, I grew up on Pac, you know. Like I grew up on music that was talking about what was happening around them, you know. Right. Maybe it's no one's asking for this, you know. Maybe no one was asking for Dear Mama or Brenda's Got a Baby. But that doesn't mean
it
that
resonates. It adds to the rhetoric. It you know, there's always somebody out there that's like, "Oh, I'm glad I heard this," or you know, even though you're doing the music for yourself.
Yeah, and that, and you know, that's one thing that, you know, one thing you said earlier that I wanted to call back to was, you know, something I read in Rick Rubin's book where he talks about, you know, the masterpiece of an artist is not his best album, his best stretch of his career, it's his whole life. You know, and then what you said earlier, it's like, yo, everything I do, I'm an artist. You know, like. And I think that's important. That's just a good attitude to have going through life. So if I'm taking a shit, I'm you know, there's an art, you know, like, I don't know, you know, that's not But you know,
yesterday's art.
But yeah, so I thought that was a very dope thing to say, and that's a good attitude to have, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it's good to know that your purpose, you know, that you live more of a purpose-driven life. Yeah. And if you don't have a purpose, then you just be an instrument, you know. Yeah. And if you don't want to spell God, then you can spell it nature, you know. Like nature is telling me to do this, and you just kind of go with the flow. I'm very zenned out about a lot of things, you know. Have a opportunity on the table, I'll naturally just kind of like not go for it right away, and I won't really know why. I'll be like, I should really do this. I should start doing this. But then I'll just kind of put it on a back burner. And then in hindsight, there's a reason for it. It's because it's not, something's missing where I have a gut instinct. So I just try to follow it. I don't give myself a hard time like, oh, you know, you're ADHD and you put things on the back burner and stuff. It's just me, and I just like, oh well, some reason I'm not inclined to give this project a lot of love right now. I need to air it out, or maybe, you know, just let it naturally happen. So even though I'm driven to do stuff
for sure,
but it is about kind of a gut instinct, and you know, maybe it's not really on my trajectory. Is it because I want that, or is it because I feel like it's going to be an amazing project?
Yeah, those moments are like, you know, I was reading something that could almost contextualize those moments almost like grace, like something that's, you don't know what's telling you to like pump the brakes a little bit, right. But and then it's even grace that you like heard it, listened to it, you know, like to me, that's like moments like that. Those are like very religious and spiritual for me. Yeah, you know, like. To me, like that's like God's voice, you know, like. But anyways, yeah, I mean that's it for me, man. You know, do you have anything you want to share? Besides everything that you shared a lot, you know, like, all right, so check out Hidden Tiger,
Cafe Joa,
Alphabet City.
Yeah, used to be called Lower East Side, right? But now it's called the East Village.
Right. And Lord Kimchi
Yeah.
on Instagram.
Yeah.
And
Follow the businesses. You
follow
don't
the
have to follow me.
businesses. I do like the name Lord Kimchi.
Yeah, my bartender gave me that name way
Love
back.
that.
My manager, Carlos. Shout out to Carlos.
Shout out Carlos.
Yeah.
That's stuck.
Because I was putting DJ Soul on all the flyers, people getting confused. They would come
Right.
in and be like, what are you playing? I'd be like,
Yeah.
oh, right now I'm playing Salt and Pepper. Now I'm
Yeah.
going to go into this.
Yeah.
And like did the Brooklyn mashup.
Yeah.
So then my bartender, every time I walked in, he's like, Lord Kimchi. So I was
Lord
like, oh, that's my hip hop
Kimchi.
name.
Oh,
That's my
that's
Fat
cool.
Buddha name.
And how did Cliff come about? Was that your parents?
Yeah, just
Oh.
wanting us to become Americanized.
Wow. Very
Clifford,
American.
my brother's
Clifford.
Howard.
Yeah. But
And
I
we
think,
were told to speak English at home, not
Yeah.
Korean. So,
right.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's part of that American dream
Yeah.
or nightmare. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, actually, now that you brought that up, like besides, telling y'all to speak English and not Korean at the house,
right.
what was a couple other things, or one or two other things that you saw them hide or intentionally diminish to be more American about themselves?
I mean, our mother raised us, and she was a very proud person. So she just wanted us to dress nicely, all this other stuff, khaki pants, polo shirt, and I'm like wearing a Misfits shirt. I'm like, I'm not gonna wear that, She wanted us to acclimate,
Yeah.
I got to high school, everybody's wearing khakis,
Yeah.
leather belt and a polo, and I used to be like, you guys chose to dress like that?
Yeah,
And they're like,
yeah.
What are you talking about?
Yeah,
and I was
yeah,
like,
yeah.
oh. Then I started to understand my mom a little bit more. She wanted me to be like those kids, accepted. It's a little bit more difficult to be accepted with a skateboard in your hand and punk shirts and shaved head and Doc Martens.
This is way back then.
Yeah,
too.
yeah, way back
Yeah.
then too. Yeah. So, she just wanted me to have an easier life.
Yeah.
Essentially, is what she was saying.
Right.
But I would have stacks of khakis,
Right.
and I would never wear them.
Hilarious.
Yeah.
Awesome, man. Well, Cliff, thank you.
Thanks for
your
having me.
time, man. All right. Thanks, everybody.